about the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be true.
And it is not a question of a little occultism or a touch of mysticism, Mr. Denton. It is vampires. It's a host of damned souls of telepaths.
I am thy father's spirit, doomed for a certain term to walk the night.
Here, the old gods aren't dead.
And what of the true god?
He's dead. Can't complain.
People assume that time is a strict progression of cause to effect, but actually, from a non-linear, non-subjective viewpoint, it's more like a big ball of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff.
You're listening to Paranormal UK Radio.
Hi everybody, this is Paranormal UK Radio Show. I'm your host, Irene Allen Block. And as usual tonight, I'm with Mark Johnson. This is a Paranormal UK Radio Show coming to you on the Paranormal UK Radio Network.
Yes, we are the flagship show here on the Paranormal UK Radio Network.
Yes, I forgot that bit too.
You know, we've only been doing it for 3 years, so I can totally understand why you forget about it.
Yeah. Oh, never mind. Anyway, how are you?
Oh, fine. As well as anybody can be with everything that's going on in the world right now. I don't know how crazy it is over in your neck of the woods, but it's pardon my French, it's just batshit insane over here.
Well, they're letting them out more in England. You know, people are getting more freedom. The shops have opened up. The restaurants are still closed and the pubs, but they're going to be opening soon. People are allowed to travel the length and breadth of the UK, of England. And here in Wales, we're still locked up. So,
well, in my state, I'm in New Jersey. I know a lot of states are handling it different, but in my state, they just opened this week. They started the phase 2 opening. So they're allowing restaurants to open with outside seating. I don't think they're doing inside seating yet. There's still a lot of businesses. Some businesses are open. Some are still closed. You have to practice, you know, your social distancing and wear masks. But, you know, I'll tell you something. The thing that frustrates me and something I'm really trying to look at things from a more spiritual perspective, because this whole thing is making me angry. And
go on then. What's wrong?
Well, it's because all the conflicting information, nobody seems to get it right. The government can't seem to get it right. The states can't seem to get it right.
Yeah, I know what you mean. We've got 4 nations here, yeah? Scotland, England, Ireland and Wales. Not one of them agrees on anything. They're all doing different, but I suppose it's all down to how it's progressing, you know? If it's going more in, like, your states are like our counties over here. So if it is more rife in one county than it is in another, that county that it's not rife in can open up and give a bit more freedom, where the other one has to stay locked down, yes?
That's the way it is over here, except you have 4 countries or counties, and we have like...
No, we have loads of counties, darling. We've got 4 countries.
4 countries, but imagine it having 52 countries over here, because each state is different.
Yeah. Well, I always look at your states like our counties. So you've got the Sussex, Surrey, Norfolk, as Karen was saying just now. You know, these are all counties. Herefordshire, we've got loads and loads of them. And I look at your states as like that, but on a bigger scale, you know, because one of your states is bigger than our whole country put together at times. Maybe not so many people, but there you go.
Yeah, you know, it's just, like I said, it's I'm frustrated by the whole thing, and you know my feelings on the media and our politics, our politicians, and the whole thing. I'm just disgusted by the entire thing, and now we're having all the civil unrest over here, and some of it
and over here in Europe.
Yep. It's bled over into Europe too, which, you know, I can sympathize with some of it. Some of
down
it,
the statues and everything over here.
Yeah, that's the thing that just absolutely pisses me off. It's like, you can't erase history. I'm sorry. And some of the statues they're pulling down are like people who have nothing to do with racism.
Winston Churchill, they tried to pull down Winston Churchill, you know, he saved the country. But even the ones that have, you know, have had something to do with racism hundreds of years ago, okay, I'm not keen on them statues, but then you take them away and you're losing the black history. You know, people should know that this took place. That it shouldn't, and this atrocity took place all those hundreds of years ago or whatever.
Well, you know, with our Civil War...
Yeah, otherwise, how do we learn not to do it again? I mean, but it's not only blacks that were enslaved. You know, there was the Germanic people.
The Irish.
They built Rome, like I said. Rome was built by slaves, and so was Pompeii. It was all built by slaves.
Right, and that's going back...
Mainly Germanic.
That's going back hundreds and thousands of years.
Yeah, but it still happens. Even now, today in slavery, a few years ago, there was a gypsy encampment or something that was raided not far from here in Wales. They took slaves out of that.
Well, look at the human trafficking that's going on right now. Yeah. But you know what? It's a lot of this is politics. A lot of this is fueling the fire. It's an election year. You know, and again, this isn't a political show. I'm going to keep my mouth shut as much as possible. I see things, I see the manipulation that's happening in the media and how things are presented specifically to inflame people and make things worse. And, you know, we all should be looking at this from a spiritual point of view and, you know, try to resolve the situations peacefully. So, you know, but again, I'm human and I get aggravated and I want to punch a wall sometimes.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter what color you are or the way I look at it, we're all the same. We are literally all the same.
Yep.
And we all deserve the same rights.
Exactly. You know?
We're humans.
Yep.
No matter what color we are, we're humans.
Yep. And we all have the same spirits. So
we all bleed the same. Everything's the same.
Yep.
You know?
So anyway, that's our commentary on the nuts stuff that's going on right now. I think, why don't we go ahead and get into the show and talk about some more positive things.
Okay, before we start, though, just now we did hear a bell ringing. I'm sorry. It's not me ringing the bell. It's this crazy parrot I got sitting beside me. Pickles Pee-wee, the Pope.
Yep. The terror of London. Actually, the terror of Wales.
With his own Facebook page.
You know what? I also want to do one other thing, too. I want to put this out there. I normally don't do this, but, you know, I'm going to ask for some prayers for my brother and my sister-in-law. My sister-in-law is dying of cancer, and she's pretty much got days to live. It's very bad. It's all throughout her body. They just diagnosed her in beginning of March, and it's all throughout her body, every organ. It's really horrible, and she's, you know, about to pass. So, you know, I'm going to ask for prayers for her and my brother, because of what he's going through too. It's really tough on him and her whole family. Everyone's helping out. So if you guys can keep them in your prayers, I'd appreciate it. So
definitely.
Anyway, so let's go ahead and
also a prayer to keep you strong, because you've got to be strong for your brother. Yeah,
I will be. He and I are doing good.
Yeah.
So let's introduce our guest. Really excited to have our guest on tonight. Our guest is a clinical hypnotherapist, and she's also an ET experiencer and conducts psychic energy readings. And so we want to introduce Karen Gresham to the program. How are you tonight, Karen?
Hi, I'm well. Thank you. And I'm looking forward to being on the show, going through the show with you guys.
Oh, great, Karen.
I was sending a lot of prayerful thoughts just a moment ago, Mark, to you and your sister-in-law. That's one thing I do with my work is I do a prayer. And sometimes I have people just call up and ask for a prayer. A couple of them today just with COVID, and I just do it. And I ask for the cosmic forces to come in.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that. And
I would love to give a prayer. Would you like for me to do that?
Sure.
On the show?
Sure.
I will try to keep Pickles Peewee quiet. Karen, I've got to explain.
Let him be with his energies are contributing to the prayer.
But normally it's dark here, you see, and he's asleep when we do the show, but because it's daylight today.
Okay.
Right.
I'm not gonna involve any religious things. We're just gonna go into the cosmic forces with the light of the Holy Spirit and all that's pure love. Okay?
Okay.
Okay.
Lord God of the universe, we ask for the light from the highest realm of illuminating consciousness at this time to come into this space of the 3D earth plane and to especially be with Mark, his brother, and his sister-in-law who are going through a suffering right now. We ask for all of you guys on the interdimensional levels of the unconditional loving force to surround him and awaken him and allow him to see the beauty of the transition, and also to let him know that his suffering is providing a light for him to illuminate, in which he gives others through his beautiful shows. May he help his brother and his brother see the pictures that he needs to understand on a higher level, and to protect his sister-in-law in the heaviest, most strong, most beautiful illuminating light, so that her transition is positive and loving. We accept this has all been done from the highest realm of light. Amen.
Thank you very much for that.
That was lovely.
It was beautiful.
Thank you.
So, Karen, let's go ahead and let's talk a little bit about your background, because there's several aspects to your background that I find really intriguing. So let's start from the very beginning. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came about in getting involved with doing the psychic energy readings, the hypnotherapy, and even your ET experiences. I mean, I don't know where to start, so I'm going to kind of throw the ball into your court and let's see where we can run with it. Well,
it's interesting. In fact, it's a long story, but I'll try to shorten it. I have been doing this since I was a child, and my mother died when I was 14. I was an only child, and so it happened all of a sudden. She was a school teacher. She got an infection, and a few months later she passed from leukemia. And so I was affected deeply by it. And my father owned a company, and he was gone most of the time. And so I was raised by a wonderful grandmother who was also psychic. And so I predicted my mother's death a year before she died, actually, through a dream. And I knew this, and I knew that I was, now at this point, I probably realized that I was being prepared for this. And so I asked for a tape recorder for Christmas because I wanted to save her voice. And so I didn't want to have her stand out, so I had everybody to say Merry Christmas or whatever. And so after that had passed, the next year, it happened. And so a lot of the relatives were very shocked that that tape existed and thought it be to the best that the tape be destroyed, which was terrible. And so they took the tape. I guess they were scared, and took the tape and destroyed it. It was not my father's wish to do that. So, and then after that, I just started my journey all the way through school. I remember giving readings whenever I was young in parties, with friends, and I didn't know how to to curb them. I didn't know how to. I would just come out and tell the truth, the whole. And sometimes it wasn't very good, and sometimes it was like this couple. And I know this. My friend's listening right now. Her name's Ellen. She had a friend in the other room, and they were sitting. This was back in the 60s. And the guy came in for a little reading, and I said, "You shouldn't be cheating on your wife in there." I didn't know I was like 16. And so he said, "Okay." He said, "That's enough of this reading." Then she came in and she said, "Now, how is this? How am I doing with him?" And I said, "Well, you need to be careful." And so she said, "Well, I needed to know that." And so the next, about 3 months later, they split. And Ellen always laughs at this to this day. She said, "You just didn't know how to curb it in because you were so young." And I said, "Well, I was just trying to help out." So since then, I've learned how to be more effective and not like that. And then going through college, the university, and then also, I'm a clinical hypnotherapist. I went to school in California. And then I've had personal training for a family of origin work in Canada for some months. And then I have lived in 2 countries. I've lived in Brazil for 8 years on a project. In my 20s, I met David St. Clair, who is a famous author. Back then, Irene may know of him. He had his residence in London and the United States. He was from Ohio. And his biggest book was called Instant ESP, and he had many. And he lived in Brazil for 20 years, and we became best friends. And so he was quite a bit older than me, but he asked me to go to work with him. And he had a friend in London named Guy Playfair. Did you ever hear, any of you all ever hear of that name?
Yeah, I know Guy Playfair.
I'm not familiar with him. Irene, you broke up there a bit.
Oh, sorry. The Enfield poltergeist case.
Guy Playfair, an author in London.
Mm.
Anyway, yeah. I'm not sure. I never met him. But David was very famous all over. And so he helped me tremendously. And we were on a project in Brazil for 8 years. It was incredible. I was half there, half here, back and forth. And then after that, I went to Italy. And so I was in Italy for 5 years working on other projects and actually had a practice in Rome. And I could speak Italian at that time. I've lost a lot of it.
Oh, but I know how you feel. Do you know, I've been going to Italy since 1971, but as I've got older, I'm forgetting quite a lot of Italian. But when I go out there, it comes back. As soon as because I used to be on the Amalfi Coast.
Yes, and that's the fun, is that it does come back. And I spoke Portuguese for like 17 years. I'm fairly fluent. But I can still have a mishap in that.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, and then I married someone from Rome, and it didn't work out after a couple of years. And then I came back, and that's when I went to school in Canada for the work of this. And then in the Italian group all over the United States, they're very, they have a lot of groups who really care about each other. So I met this doctor through Luigi, and he said, "Why don't we open up a clinic?" And this was like in 1989. And I said, "Okay." Well, we did. And he used to be a famous heart surgeon for a man in Houston who's deceased, Michael DeBakey. And he was in that team. But we had this clinic, and he basically went around to a lot of different countries, and I'm the one that kept things going. But I could do anything I wanted to, like my clinical hypnotherapy and teach and so forth. That's when insurance covered me. So we had that until 96 when the insurance company told. Then he went to another place, and we still worked together. But then I finally got my own overhead in 2009. So, and I've been doing. He's been like a surrogate father to me. So it's been quite interesting. But the interesting part is that my soulmate and my galactic partner, I started dating him when I was 16. He was 8 years older than me.
Yeah.
And our parents didn't like it because of the age difference. So we split in 76. Mm-hmm. And in 77 is when all this with David St. Clair came on, and then Rome and all this. So in the year 2000, we got back together. And so we were married for 19 years.
Oh, nice.
And he passed away 6 months ago.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
About that.
Thank you. But he went through this with me. We did a lot of work on ourselves, and we learned a lot about parapsychology and ufology and the whole thing. He was a real trooper. He was my rock. But we made a code for when he died, that how he would come back through signs and symbols and synchronicities. Yeah. And so I was with him the moment he left, and it has been difficult, but I have these signs and symbols. I've gotten them. They've all come through. And I'm kind of a skeptic. I mean, I like to make sure I don't make everything fluffy. I like to have the truth for everybody, because we can all do this if we will. Yeah. But I saw him actually in a vague materialization to the side of my bed, looking at the television, because he always liked to watch the news. And he was maybe in his mid-30s. And I knew not to look over, but I could see. And that was it. Yeah. That's the only time. But then I was getting my messages from my landline one day. This was about 2 months ago. So I was getting them, and all of a sudden, I heard his voice. He had left me a message on my landline.
He had.
And I thought, oh my God. And so it sounded like a struggle. I could tell that he was struggling through the dimensional portals there, like he was kind of tired. And the only thing he said is, I'll find a new vehicle. And so I have had so many people to look at it, listen to it. I had his voice before he passed, and then I had this. And some sound experts say, gosh, there is no doubt about it. This was him. So that's how strong he was. And I don't play it on the air, but if anybody ever wants to listen to it off the air, I'll be glad to share it. But it's for everybody can do it. It's just that he was a true seeker, and he was very smart, very educated, and that was his life too.
Okay.
That's a part of my history. I've shortened it.
Well, but just to share a little bit with that, first of all, Irene and I are both been very involved in paranormal research for years. Her way longer than I am, but
yes, way longer.
Way longer.
Way, yeah.
We're all on the same page. That's great.
Yeah, but it's interesting with the communication. I mean, I had another brother. I had an identical twin brother, and he passed away. Good Lord, coming up on 4 years ago now, and
it must be.
I've had some hints from him. At times, I've had one very vivid dream where he came to me, but then most recently in December, I was playing around with a piece of equipment, paranormal equipment called an SP7 Spirit Box. It scans radio frequencies, and you can get voices coming through that aren't part of the radio stations. And a friend of mine who knew my brother was with me, and just out of the blue, I just decided, well, let me test this out. And I asked my brother, are you here? And all of a sudden, it was his voice, no ifs, ands, or buts. His voice comes through and says, yes. And it's like,
oh, that's beautiful.
That was crystal clear communication. But then I also like to share. Now I know I'm assuming you're familiar with Whitley Strieber.
Oh yeah, okay. He's part of our group.
Yeah, have you read his book, The Afterlife Connection? About his wife, Anne?
That I don't have time to sit down and read like I should, but I wanted to.
Wonderful book. And we interviewed him. We had him on the show and talking about his after-death communications with his wife, who's very much still involved with him now. But what was funny is she actually kind of came through the show when we were talking to him. In different ways. There were some strange noises during the show, and Irene started saying some things that just seemed out of character for her. And we talked to Whitley a little bit about later, and he started laughing and goes, "Yeah, that's Anne," because she'll come through other people like that sometimes. So it's fascinating, how our loved ones can make themselves known after they've passed.
And that's what they want to do. That's what the part of my work that I enjoy doing the most is to talk about people who are where you are right now, Mark, and others. And because if people understand when the loved one passes on, they want the ones that they left behind, their loved ones, to know and understand what it all means, because they're in a good place. And they become the observer, and they're in this wonderful place of where they want to be, mostly, and are the ones I have. And then they have a feeling that they want to help the loved ones that are here still in the theater.
Now, with your hypnotherapy, what is your primary focus? Are you just doing general hypnotherapy for people dealing with current life issues, or do you delve into past life regression or anything like that?
Well, I used to do that family of origin stuff, and it got so heavy for me that I had to stop, because I'm an empath, mm-hmm. and I was receiving a lot of things that didn't belong to me, and I had to let them go through me, and I developed an autoimmune disease because of it. So I had to stop with a lot of that and go ask for a higher way to do that. Now, what I do now is, in my place, I have a recording studio, and I make recordings for people as I go to my level of what they need to hear through sound and music in order to teach them how to receive their goal, whatever it is, be it clarity about afterlife, be it whatever they wish. It could be a physical goal. And we start that. I have mostly students, and they're individual, and they're all light workers on their path. And so every time we have a lesson, I do an MP3. I used to do a CD. I've got 3 of them published on Amazon.com. One's in Portuguese, and 3 of them are in English. But then I started doing the personalized ones, and I have someone named Derek who helps me get them to them through email, because I know how to do very little technologically. So that's how I do it.
Yeah, that's why I keep Mark.
Yeah, I was going to say, that sounds familiar, Irene.
I mean, that's why I thought, oh my gosh. In fact, I think Derek kind of helped me get on here today.
Yeah.
So he's been teaching me Zoom, Skype, free conference, and WhatsApp, and I've got a lot of things. I mean, mostly school, to try to be able to do this better.
Well, in the past, we used Skype for everything for years, and now there's so many different alternatives between Zoom and whatnot that...
Yeah, I still like Skype. I can understand Skype. I can't understand Zoom.
Well, I think Skype is clearer than Zoom itself.
Yes.
And Derek is a senior IT specialist with Apple, and he said that so many people are going to Zoom that they've had to stretch out, and I don't know what word it is,
bandwidth,
to make it clearer. So I think Skype is still better. And then there's this WhatsApp for people who talk out of the country, and
I can't get on with that either.
No.
My grandchildren say to me, Nan, get on WhatsApp. Get on WhatsApp. No, just phone the house.
So that's right.
Yeah.
So, I've been working virtually for a long time since COVID, and it's been good. And I think some people who want to feel their issues don't really want to see me and don't want me to see them. So we'll just do it by the phone, and I can read photographs, and I can read sound, and I read auric fields. So that's how I do it. And clairaudient is the same as clairvoyant, and it's just through the ears and the sound. And so there are many ways I do that. But that's my whole life. I'm doing that all the time.
Now, when you were growing up and you started realizing you had some of these abilities, did you mention that there was anybody else in your family that also had this? Or
my grandmother, the one who raised me, my father's mother, and she was wonderful. In fact, she used to read cards just while she was sitting around playing, and just occupying herself. She was a widow for a long time because my father was in World War II, and his father passed while he was overseas. So she was 40, I think, and then she lived to be 88. And so she was taking care of me at a very young age. I was young, and she was in her early 70s, but she sure didn't seem that way. But she taught me how. In fact, the strange thing about it, Mark, when you mentioned this, is that she told me I was going to the university, and she said, now I will pay for you to go to Brazil if you'll just go right now. And I said, why? I said, I don't want to leave Robert, because at that time we were together the first 10 years, and I thought, well, he could get shipped off to Vietnam any moment, and I don't want to leave. She said, no, I don't know why, but I think you should go to Brazil. And I said, no, I'm not going to go because I don't want to leave him because he's at Fort Hood. I don't know what's going to happen. She said, okay, well, if you change your mind, let me know. And see, then years later in 76, 77 is when all this happened about Brazil. So I think she must have seen forward in time and not really know what she was seeing to give a more detailed, summary of it. So that's the only person. My father respected me being this way a lot. He was very educated, and he knew that I was different, and he encouraged it. He had a business degree from the University of Texas and a minor in psychology. So he knew that I needed to be respected. He said, just do the best that can be done in what you can do. And then he died when I was 28, and he asked me what I saw out there beyond Earth. Well, I was a kid. I could just tell him a little, but I was 28 years old and, pretty immature for that age anyway. So, yeah.
Well, it's a lot of people we've talked to have had similar experiences like you in growing up, and how they learn about their abilities, but sometimes they'll have to learn either to keep quiet about it. Some people suppress it. Some people have family who understand it. Irene, you just didn't really talk much about how your experiences, did you?
No, I didn't.
Irene, you're gonna have to talk right in the microphone. We can't hear you.
Okay, a moment. No, I'm just wondering how I'm going to. What a parrot tastes like cooked. He's driving me crazy.
Oh,
he feels the energy. He's enjoying it.
Yeah. See what I mean? He has to ring his bell.
Oh,
any other time, I tell you what, I've been bribing him with grapes and something.
Are you still there? Irene, we lost your connection.
It's all right.
Oh, there you are.
I said I've been bribing him with grapes and cherries, and can I keep him quiet? No.
He feels it.
Oh, he's going to be in the oven in a minute, I tell you, Karen. Okay. Yeah. What was the question, Mark?
Well, my question, I was commenting on people who have these abilities from a young age and how they handle it. And I was just asking you, when you were growing up, that's in your book. By the way, Irene is a published author. She has her autobiography. Oh my God!
Don't ask me what it's called.
Life Among the Spirits.
Life Among the Spirits.
Yes.
Right.
And but you didn't really you kind of kept it to yourself for a while, didn't you? You really didn't have anybody to talk to about it.
Well, no, I didn't. My father, he wasn't too bad because he used to foresee disasters and things, so he sort of understood. But my mother was totally different. So I learned not to say things, because if I saw a spirit, ghost, whatever I saw, if I said it to my mother, she would always come out with the same thing, which was, if anybody's going to see a ghost, it's me. I was born in a haunted house. And she said that to me all through my life. Every time I spoke about anything like this, she'd throw that one at me. So I learned in the end just not to bother saying anything. I kept it quiet for a hell of a long time. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you.
You sound fantastic.
Sorry, darling.
That's interesting. That's good.
Yeah, but this was also back in the 50s, when
you really
didn't really talk too much about it.
You were supporting you in some way, though. That's neat. She just wanted to be the one to tell about it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I don't know. She's gone now, so... my mother, she was my mother. That's all I can say.
We all come in with these plays, and we all come in to get our glitches out. And because nobody comes in with a perfect family, it's not supposed to be that way. Because this is the play, it's just like Shakespeare said, life has its entrances and its exits. And the plays do too, because we've had so many. Especially those of us who are so attracted to this because we know we're in a play, even though I think we have a lot of feelings emotionally, and we're scared and we're sad and we get our feelings hurt, probably even more so. But we're here, and on the other hand, we know this is a play and that we are forever.
See, right now, I can't tell if we're in a tragedy or a comedy. It's one of the two.
A bit of both, I think. I think it's a bit of both.
I think. It's a sad, sad thing. And you're in a real hard part up there, Mark. I love where you are in New Jersey and New York. I lived in New York a little bit back in the day. But you all had a lot happen up there.
Was it New York City or another part of New York?
New York City. New
York City, yeah. I'm an hour outside of New York City. I'm in the very northern part of New Jersey, up by the ski resorts, just a couple miles from the New York state border. It's basically the mountains of New Jersey. It's beautiful up here, very rural. So we're not really affected too much over here, but you get into the city, everything is going crazy in the city right now, and in south of me in Jersey. So it's like I said, this is just very, very interesting times we're in, and I'm not sure if it's because of everything that's been going on the last couple of months, but recently my focus has shifted. I've been doing a lot of reading on not so much past life experiences, but more like near death or in between life experiences. I've been reading a lot of Michael Newton and some other authors who do the hypnotic regressions, taking people back to not just past lives, but then the stages of the in between lives. And I've been finding that to be very fascinating. I guess it's just trying to get a better understanding of the bigger spiritual picture, so to speak.
That happened to me, though, Mark. I told you once that I was hypnotized to stop smoking But he wasn't interested in stopping me from smoking. He just wanted to know who I was, what my lives were, and what was happening in between those lives from the time I passed to the time the next life. He wanted to know what it was all about.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was unethical. He was very unethical. He hypnotized you under false pretenses.
Yeah,
he did. And, at the very end, he turned around and said to me, in the hypnosis, because I got a copy of the tape, so I know what he was up to. Wow. And at the very end, he gave me about 5 minutes of, you don't want a cigarette anymore. Cigarettes taste horrible to you and all this sort of thing. So when I came out there, I gave him this money, and I came out there. I got to the front gate of the property, and I lit up a cigarette.
Wow.
Yeah. So it didn't work.
That's part of my hypnosis. I've never been interested in helping people with addictions through hypnosis.
No.
I have done that. Mine has all been paranormal and teaching people to go to their altered levels of consciousness. And I've never done many past life regressions either, because David could do them so well. And I just really kind of didn't get into that. I think we all can kind of, if we go down to a deep level, we can see little vignettes and pictures. They may not be a full story, but of all of our lives. And even the in-between.
I think sometimes you get a glimpse, even in this life, you get a glimpse of a previous life.
Right.
It's like
you or something like that. It can be a quick thing.
Yeah, it can be a quick thing, or you can be in this in-between stage of kind of daydreaming, and all of a sudden you are seeing something,
Uh-huh.
Well, let me ask you, Karen, with the type of hypnosis you do, you're connecting people to different levels of consciousness. Does that mean you're helping them connect possibly with their higher selves?
That's it. Their higher selves. Uh-huh. And to realize that that God is within them, not outside of them. And that God is the source, the cosmic source. It's the purest of energy. And it's there's one cute little video that a dear friend sent me. And it's two little girls. They're maybe 10 years old. And they're called volunteers. And they're not from Earth. They're from another race outside of this planet. And they telepathically have the cutest little conversation. And it's on my website. It's on my if y'all want to friend me, it's on my Facebook. Mm-hmm. Scrolling way down. I try to repost it about every 2 weeks because it's the best thing I've ever seen. Cute. But it said that the people of Earth don't trust themselves. Only they say it really sweet and cute. And I teach people how to realize that we can trust ourselves and to believe in ourselves and to make that part of us grow, where we don't feel like that we're being controlled by outside activity, which we don't have to be if we don't accept it. Now, where we are now, in my opinion, with all the global things going on, those of us who are traveling paranormally to search and to help and to give of ourselves, we volunteered to do this. And we came in at this time. These are the times when it would be really struggling. And, but it's also I've seen a lot of people wake up into a higher spiritual seekership or questioning and be more spiritual. It's been good and bad.
We've talked with some other psychics or channelers and other people that talk about, and I wanted to get your opinion if you feel this way or not, that we're in a time of transition right now, that this is the point where all of this strife and all this craziness that we're going through right now is part of this transition of moving up to the next level energy-wise. I mean, do you have an opinion on that? Do you feel that, or do you think what we're going through is something else?
Well, no, I think it's exactly what you said, and I think it was very well put. I also feel that not only do we have a global thing going on that's so hard, but there's so many pecking orders. I think that people have to get their, in many different groups, corporations, we're all equal. And, I was about, as far as this racism is concerned, I said, now we need the blue people to come in now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's so many different races in our universe, and I think that would kind of straighten it out from a little bit, or maybe they couldn't handle it at all. I remember, but I do feel that this is a transition. I think it's wonderful if people would get off their gerbil wheel and to seek and to ask, and you do it through fear and sadness. The only thing that blocks that is the anger, and we all get angry, and probably from not being able to get to anything because you were waiting on customer service for 2 or 3 hours. But we all get frustrated. It's a time of all those emotions. But sadness and fear can really lift you up into seeking, what does this all mean? What is after death? What is it? Why is this happening? Why did this come in a blink of an eye? It really did. Even though it's kind of been around a while, but it really has surfaced around March. So it's a definite transitional period.
We've gone through several phases over the last few years, and this is, of course, the strongest right now, getting hit with a double whammy of a pandemic and social unrest, and which seems to just keep going. I mean, there's no real stopping it. This is reminding me of the 1960s, not only the civil rights marches back then, but the Vietnam protests. But it's getting a lot more violent, a lot more crazy. I think there's too much victimization going on and people not taking responsibility for their own lives. And I think where a lot of my anger and frustration comes from is not out of fear. I'm not afraid of any of this. I'm frustrated with human beings for, buying into the fear that's being peddled by the media and our so-called leaders and politicians. There's too many agendas at work, and people aren't looking at the bigger spiritual picture and working to come together. And so in one way, I understand that from a spiritual perspective, yes, there's a transition going on right now, and we're being dragged into it, kicking and screaming. At the other part of me feels like we're taking several major steps backwards. So I get frustrated with people who I'm friends with when they start spouting the political garbage of one extreme or another, and their short-sightedness, and if you try to talk to them, they don't want to hear it. They only want to hear their own opinion regurgitated back to them. And it keeps that cycle of fear and victimhood, going. And I'm just waiting for it. I'm just waiting for it all to stop or turn into something much more positive. And it certainly doesn't help that with the pandemic, I think that's what's really causing this to be worse than it is, because people have been cooped up for 2 months and now they're letting their frustrations out.
Mm-hmm. Right. That's very well put. I agree. I also think, and you said transition, and it brought up a memory of what's the most important thing. What light workers or people like us have come in here to do is to assist in lifting and awakening people by your beautiful shows and other means, in order for these people to start asking questions beyond the physical plane, in order to feel, in order to move to a higher way to think beyond the physical plane, because this is electromagnetic fields. We have our electromagnetic field, and everything around us is energy. So if you look at it this way, the majority of the public globally who are not awakened yet, we attract in the likeness of that same electromagnetic vibration, which is where we are. Now, we can change this. We can change this all if we will, respect the laws of safety, and at the same time, start asking questions about spirit, about what is this, about what's afterlife, who are we, who is the I am consciousness. I want to know, and study and read like you've done, I've done, Irene's done and written. So we're here to bring these people to awakening. And in my part of the United States, it's difficult because there's a lot of religionists here, and there's only one God, and there are a lot of religions that are all beautiful, but it's different in the Northeast, so you don't have it as hard as we do down here. And I don't know how it is in the UK, Irene. That's an interesting question for me to ask you, as far as religion is concerned, about the seekership.
I don't know. Religion in itself is not that. Before all this, it was kind of dropping off. People were, the certain people, the old people and the devout were going to church, and things like that. But no. Religion's not big here like it is out there. You've got all these ministers and padres and things like that. We haven't got all that.
Well, you know what? Again, especially in the UK, and let's look at the history aspect of it, and this is where I can come in because I'm a history buff, is the fact that, the UK had the Church of England, and, Catholicism was, was abolished years ago in that country. Of course, it's come back now, but it's still, the religious aspect in the UK is not like it is here in the US. And let's face it, the US, the people who started colonizing the US, a lot of them were religious groups that were fleeing Europe and coming over here to practice religious freedom. And so we have so much deep religion in this country, in especially specific parts of the country. Now,
you do over here. They have to fight to get bums on seats in the pews.
Yeah. Well, in a lot of ways, the same here too. But a lot of churches are struggling, and yet at the same time, you'll have, like where I am in New Jersey. This is a fairly liberal state, so it's not very religious, but I can go right over the border here into Pennsylvania, and Pennsylvania is very, very religious. So, so we still, in some counties, we still have the blue laws, where you can't open things on a Sunday. So it depends on the location.
That's totally different here, Everything's open. Normally, before COVID, everything would be open on a Sunday. All the stores, everything, the superstores. I'm going to do pickles. I really am going to swing for that bird. He hasn't done this for a long time. He's really playing up tonight. And the pubs are open. The pubs are open all night. It's totally different. Totally different. I think they close on a Sunday night, but...
Well, but I understand what Karen's talking about down there in Texas, and especially in the South, is very religious, but other parts of the country, you get, like, the West Coast. I'm from California, and while it's out there, I wouldn't call it a religious state. Again, and a lot of it does lot of the states do go down political lines. If it's a more liberal state, it's a little bit less religious. If it's very conservative, it's very religious. If
it's conservative, they say it is, but do they live it?
Oh, no.
You know, if they believe in Jesus, what would Jesus do? Remember that book?
Yes.
A long time ago?
Yeah.
Well, a lot of these really conservative religions wouldn't do what Jesus would do.
Right.
And that's fine. I don't want to criticize anybody, but having grown up a lot with it was really hard. And, it's interesting. And I love everybody. And I believe very strongly in God, and I pray to Jesus and all of it. But California is the state. You were lucky to have been born there.
I wouldn't call it lucky.
Really?
I couldn't wait to get out of there. I left in my mid-30s and never looked back because it was too crowded. It was starting to go downhill. I grew up north of Los Angeles, San Fernando Valley. I was there for the L.A. riots, the Rodney King riots. We used to call L.A. the place of four seasons: earthquakes, fires, floods, and riots. And I lived through two major earthquakes, the 71 Sylmar quake, and I lived in Sylmar at the time. I was 6. But and then the 94 Northridge quake, which was just a couple miles away from where I live, so I might as well have been right on top of it. So, but yeah, I never liked California, and I was happy to get out of there. The
only thing I knew California for was its oranges.
Well,
Jaffa oranges, always on the television.
I always hear about Florida oranges, but yeah, where I grew up in San Fernando Valley in the early days, in the 30s through the 50s, it was all orange groves. And then after the war, and especially in the 60s, they started building all the cities and communities, and now it's all one big city now.
Yeah,
part of LA.
It.
So
I like the Southwest, and I like New York and New Jersey too, though.
It's funny. Growing up in LA, I loved Manhattan. I love New York City. I love going to the city. I haven't been there in a couple of months, and it looks like it's going to be a long time before I'll step foot in it again, till things calm down. But I really enjoy it. But you know what? It's nice to visit. I wouldn't want to live there. I kind of like where I'm at, which I have a nature preserve in my backyard. I see wildlife every day, so I feel a little more connected to nature up here.
Yeah, I'm seeing wildlife at the moment with this parrot.
Parrot's got a lot of energy, and I can feel his energy.
Maybe it's your fault then, Karen, because
he really
Karen, it must be your fault.
I am. I'm attracted to him.
Yeah, he's attracted to you as well because he's normally quiet.
He's trying to. He said, I have a little voice. I want to say something. So I'll say from my phone. And that's what he's doing. He's ringing his little bell and making his little... Yeah.
Yeah. Is he doing his ball?
No.
Yeah, that's good.
Do you know something? He has I think it's an age thing, because how old is he now? He's got to be 36, 37. This is Pickles I'm talking about. He's an old parrot. But I think he's got a bit of rheumatism or something, because he hasn't been bouncing on that ball lately. He hasn't done it for a few weeks.
Maybe like the rest of us who are getting older, his knees are starting to give out a bit.
We all have that.
He's got a red ball that hangs on a chain in his cage, and when he's feeling frisky, he kind of bonks it. And he bonks it.
Or does he have a playmate?
No. Oh no.
Did he used to have one?
No way. Can you put anything? You can't even put a dog near Pickles. Pickles is the most vicious, nastiest little bird anyone's ever seen. He is a He's evil.
He's a spirit. He has a strong voice. He just looks like a bird.
Oh God.
He's great.
Karen, he's a demon. He's a demon with feathers. I tell you, I love him to pieces. I literally do love him to pieces, but he's the most vicious, nastiest little thing out. He really is. And he thinks he's a cross between a golden eagle and a Rottweiler. He's not frightened of any dog, and if he gets out of that cage, he dive bombs you like a Spitfire. I tell you, he's. But then other times he can be quite nice, as long as you don't put your fingers in a cage, But he will, if you put your head down towards the bars, he will pull a few strands of hair through and play with it.
That's cute.
Yeah. At the moment, I've tried to stop him being noisy by putting my dressing gown over the cage, and he's been trying to pull that into the cage.
Oh, he wants to be a part of it.
Yeah. I've got a cross here beside me. I'm going to put that up at the cage and see what happens. Oh, he's attacking it. Okay.
Well, getting back to the show, since we kind of went off the rails there with Pickles.
Oh, yeah. One moment, Mark, though. Anybody that wants to get onto Pickles Pee Wee, the Parrot Pope's Facebook page, say hello to him. He will say hello back. He will.
Karen, one of the other things I wanted to talk about is... It's mentioned in your bio that you are an ET experiencer. I was wondering if you could tell us about that, how that came about, or what your first memories are, and how did that proceed?
Well, I was around 8 or 9 years old, and I had been sick with the flu or whatever it was back in 57, 58, and I had a yellow bedroom. And so I woke up and saw a little being. It was a little gray, looking into my vanity, but I felt it was a child. And so I screamed out for my mother. And I said, I just saw somebody looking in the mirror over there. And of course, he immediately went into another dimension. She said, you're just having a bad dream. She said, you're going to be fine. Just go back to sleep. Of course, that's what I did. And then the next day, I awoke, and there was a little toy that we used to have back then called a click-clack. There were little squares that were
I know those.
You know those, by the elastic, and you'd hold them, and they'd go down. And hold one, and they'd all fall down. Mm-hmm. I had that. And all of a sudden, I looked over to the window. I was on my side, and the thing was just up in the air by itself. And then they all fell down, and then they all fell to the ground, to the floor.
Huh.
And I'll never forget that. That was my very first. And I never said anything about it to either of my parents any more than what I did before earlier. But I never thought, I got into it really big in my 20s through Billy Meyer in Switzerland, mm-hmm. and the Pleiadians and all of that. And I was in Europe at the time. I was in Italy on another assignment. And a friend and I were going to actually go to Switzerland, but we got sidetracked, and I didn't have time to do it all. So I missed that one. But over the years, I have felt this, it's gotten more and more. Plus, I'm a member of a very fantastic group here in the United States called Starworks USA. And it's by Paula Harris.
I know Paula, yes.
Uh-huh. And so I have presented on her symposium since she began with the Starworks in 2012. And I do my music and my channel and my prayer and talk about that's what I do. And I didn't do it last year because my husband died the week we had it. Mm-hmm. And so one of the couples in the audience texted me after that, and she put a film up about me, and I was very grateful. And this couple said, Karen, Robert was here. He just tapped my husband on the shoulder. Several people saw him and felt him. And that he was really, I know he was really, really sad that we didn't get to make it. And so he was going to even hire a nurse to ride with us because he had COPD and oxygen. We couldn't fly. From where I am and where that is 2 days of driving. And then he wasn't even able to do that. So I've been very grateful to Paula for everything she's done for me. And I love to do the show, and it's really great. The funny thing about that is that it has a story to it. I, at the time in 2012, was working with a CEO who had a huge company, and we had a project that we were going to take to the UN. And I was working with him on that, and he was ordering all these books called How to Get What You Want by Orison Swett Marden. It's like back in the 1800s. I don't even know if you can get it anymore. But I would keep those books for him, and we would work. And so then Stephenville Lights came on. It's another story in Texas, in Stephenville, where the mothership came through, and the other ships came out and had communication with some of the farmers, some of the people.
Yeah, we're actually very familiar with that because we helped, we had a small publishing company for a while, and we helped one of the former members of MUFON who investigated that case. He published a book on it called The Stephenville UFO.
Yeah.
And Sherry.
And Angela Joyner was the one who wrote about it. She's great. And what is his name? I may know him.
Ken Cherry.
Ken Cherry?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know him. He's a friend of mine on Facebook. So anyway, our CPA called Robert, a husband, and said, tell her not to go down there because Randy won't like it. It'll ruin the project. And Robert very softly said, you can't go down there. We can't go. And I said, why? How could you ask me not to? He said, because he said, and he called the name of the person. I said he would not like that. And I said, okay, whatever you want. And Robert said, look, if this is supposed to be, the mountain will come to you. You won't have to go to the mountain. Just let it go. And so I did. And so then in 2012, I had a student to come from the Unity Church, and she'd just been through a service, and she comes in for her session with me. She said, guess what? And I said, no, what? She said, well, there's a UFO conference going to be in Glen Rose. I said, are you kidding me? She said, yeah, it's about Stephenville Lights. Well, Robert and I grew up in Glen Rose. I said, are you kidding me? And she said, no. And I said, well, let's call and make a reservation right now. And so we did. And it was Paula. And Paula's Italian-American. And we had spoke a little Italian. I spoke terrible Italian at that point. And she said, this is really interesting because the person who... yeah, the person who... Let me get this on. The person who I had could...
Karen? Did we lose you?
It went bang. Karen?
It says there's a...
what's happening?
It says there's a problem with my...
Well, we hear you now. You dropped off there for a moment.
I dropped off from that, too. It must have been an energy thing. Who knows? An ET confusion. Anyway, I'm sorry. Because on my screen it said a breakage of... It's interesting. The computer iPhone is attempting to access report on your computer.
Huh.
What does that mean?
Yeah, maybe the ETs are... We've had them interfere before on past shows, so...
You just ignore it. It says block or allow. I think I should let Derek take care of that later.
Block.
What do you guys?
Sounds like you got a hacker there.
What should I do, guys?
Block it.
Block it? I hope I don't block you all.
You shouldn't.
Oh, is it on Skype or is it on the computer?
It's coming over Mark's face on our deal.
Huh.
Now it just went away. Okay, they just took it away, guys. Anyway, that's funny.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, she helped me learn how to speak because I knew how to speak to families in a room and all that. But I'd never gotten up in front of all these people. And I did a lousy job. She did it all. And she was great. And so I sold a lot of CDs, and all my students came and they were there. And we started from there. And we went from 2012 when she began up to now, which she has one showing in November in Laughlin. It's about AI, and a lot of interesting people are going to be there.
Artificial intelligence.
Artificial intelligence. And Paula was associated with Hynek, and they were together back in the day, and his son is going to be there as a presenter, and Lynn Katai, who does Phoenix Lights. So it's going to be a great conference.
Yeah, sounds good.
So
I wish I could go.
Yeah.
Too far away. Wow. This is it.
You know, there are things all over, and there's some in the UK, you know. She did one in the UK, in fact. David Icke was there, and some of the other people. In fact, she won an award there, but I can't remember, a couple of years ago. I think it was in Manchester.
Yeah.
Was Paula, you mean?
It wasn't.
I think that may have been that. Oh, what's his name? That fella that.
Chris Evers?
Oh, yeah.
Who's that?
I can't remember. Can't remember his name. It's not that important, but
no, it's okay.
He used to be a policeman.
Oh, yeah, I didn't know any of that. So, and I haven't been able to travel.
A transport cop, anyway.
I used to, because I was with Robert, and so I was basically hunkered down for 11 years, which is fine. It's great. Now here I'm getting the message again, folks. The computer iPhone is attempting to access reported on your computer. Do you want to allow this connection? I'm going to ignore it again.
Yeah, I would ignore it for now.
Isn't that funny?
Huh.
Have you got an iPhone?
I have an iPhone. But also here,
trying to sync with it.
Derek just set me up with Norton 360, which is protect yourself.
Yeah, antivirus.
So it's an antivirus. So I best not touch anything until he does it, because we're doing great. It'll go away. It'll go away.
Yeah, and if it covers up Mark's picture again, don't worry about it.
Yeah, nobody wants to see my
cover up Mark's picture.
Yeah, nobody wants to see me anyway.
I think it's a sign, maybe. When things like this happen, I know it may sound Pollyanna on my part, but I think we actually have another frequency that can't maybe get as far down as we are here. And they're coming in. They want to help. They want to put us out there. So that's what I'm going to look at it as.
That works for me.
Yeah.
Well, with getting back to your ET experiences, do you have any memories? You've seen the ETs when you were young. Do you have any memories about being on board a craft? And I hate using the word abduction. I think it's overused, but
use either. Some people may feel that they're abducted. Actually, I'm with them all the time.
What do you mean by that?
What do I mean is that they're present in an interdimensional realm that I sense, helping out and helping, especially our planet. Mm-hmm. And I communicate with them. this is interesting because they work with me and they work with all of us if we'll accept that. And there are many different races, like Paul Hellyer said. I mean, there are 57 known races when he did the UFO disclosure in Washington. I don't know which ones are with me. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I see a person who's like a human, who is like, I would say, a Pleiadian.
Mm-hmm.
And I have help all the time because I can read the symbols, and the symbols come out on Earth. Now, here we got to pop up again. So that's a confirmation to me that whatever I'm saying, we're hitting on some good subjects.
Yes, and Pickles has gone to sleep, so the energy's good at the moment.
I think they're here with all of us right this moment because they're going to use us. We just have to read what they're saying, read it from within, and look at the synchronicities that are around us, and also the matrix of time. I mean, have you all noticed how fast the day goes?
Oh my God, yes.
I mean, it's going so fast. It's all been speeded up, really.
Yeah, that is so true. Every day I say to my husband, where's it going? You know? You'd think being stuck in the house all the time, you'd be bored.
Right.
Sugarless. You'd be bored sugarless, right? And time would go so slow. But it doesn't. It's just zooming past.
It does. I mean, I have a friend that we've been working on communicating with extraterrestrials for 20 years, to where we actually get these very deep pictures, and a lot of it has to do with the DNA. And I sometimes get pictures from them about how they're going to reconstruct maybe the hospitals or something like that, because health is very important to our world right now. And in the United States, down here, we have a lot of doctors' offices that are in buildings that's associated with the hospital. So in order to break in and get through, the valet is maybe crammed with 40 people, which you can imagine is not the healthy thing to do. And you can't even get in to be seen. And so a lot of the organizations are closed down. And so I got a vision from them just yesterday that there's going to be a huge construction on a lot of the large hospitals, to where the investors with the big money people are going to start constructing offices that are nearby the hospitals. You may have 4 doctors' offices in a line where you just park your car and walk in, and the lab and the waiting room, and everything's right there. So there's
a bit like over here.
Right. I see coming. And so all these hospitals are going to start changing their construction. So I get information like that from them. Or I hear things and see synchronicities like what was coming up for us. So see, nothing blocked us. But why did that come up 3 times, and it kept coming up over and over again?
I don't know. You're going to have to ask your friend. But why? Why do you think time has speeded up? Because it definitely has. It really does feel like it has.
It has. And even children that I work with have said that. I think it's part of the vibration with helping the planet. I know ET, extraterrestrial. I think there are some races out there who can, and they're far more evolved than we are in technology, and they're blending. And I think they're helping. They're trying to help everything that they can. Those that are trying to help save our planet, or provide the knowledge we need to assist also.
Yeah, but if they speed up time, Karen, that makes their lives go so quick.
It's
hard. And when you get to 70, like we're approaching 70,
right?
You don't want it to go quick, do you? You want it to go slower. Knowing that you've only got about 10 years left.
Yeah.
If that.
But I think that we're going to be in a different mindset at that time. We're going to see it differently. That it's just an illusion. I know Robert sent me one message, and I was at the elevator. I live in a building, and he sent me just a song. I would have never thought of it as a child. It was really big.
I was going to ask you earlier on, did you get a song? I was about over an hour ago when you were talking about your husband.
Oh.
I was going to say, you were talking about your husband and signs and everything. I said, did you get in my head, I said, did she get a song? Shall I ask her if she's got a song? No, I better not.
No, he's probably with you and with us at this moment because he was always trying to help me.
That was about an hour ago.
Row, row, row your boat gently down.
Gently down the stream, yeah.
Yeah, life is but a dream. And that came up, and I said, okay, thank you. I'm supposed to contemplate on that. It was a beautiful children's thing, and I have one of my students who's going to be doing a book on that to help the children.
I used to sing that to my grandchildren when they were small.
Oh, the thing just popped up again, guys. When you said, Irene, they were here. Oh, my goodness. So I see that as a sign. Okay. Karen, why don't you guys reveal yourself then?
Yeah. Will you receive information and they communicate with you in various ways? Do you ever feel like sometimes you receive, for lack of a better word, what I would call a download? Like you feel a download of information is dumped into you. You may not know exactly what it is, just that suddenly information has been placed in your head or deep in your conscious.
Yeah, I do. I do a lot. And at that time, I should have a little recorder with me, which I don't use. No telling where it is, but yes, I do. And they come in like little vignettes. It's not a whole story. Sometimes it just jumps over and over again. Or I see these very evolved, what do you call it, formulas. And a lot of it has to do with DNA, a lot of it recently. But then I should be taking notes. But I don't. And I'm promised to do that. I need to do that. But that's true. I think a lot of us do who are light workers and who have come to help out. I'm sure you have too. But I think we do. We have to be more, I have to be more careful to do something about that, be more organized. And that's true. That's important.
Now, sorry about that. I just banged my head on the mic.
A part of
came up again, guys. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, part in your bio that Carolyn sent over is you worked with some coal miners who were witness to a 1987 UFO sighting in Virginia. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, I did. I worked with the Whitfield experience in Dallas. I had some people who a psychiatrist called in 1987, 88, and asked me if I would come up to Bluefield and Tazewell at their one crossover the road and work in their clinic for 3 months. And I said, sure. And I said, doing what? She said, I want you to interview all my patients because I don't think they're hallucinating. I believe them. And she was really, really smart. And they were a great group of doctors. And I did that. And I would work 8-10 hours a day on interviewing them. And I believed everything they said because they would describe I heard my trash can out and I went out to the trash and then I saw the lights up above and they were whirling. And then I looked in my trash can and there was no trash. And then the sounds got bigger and bigger and I didn't know what to do. And I heard so many of these stories. And there's a book out about it called Don't Look Up. And an editor at the time of the paper wrote about it. And he supposedly was driving up the mountains and encountered a reptilian or a man who was like that, walking on 2 feet. And when he saw the headlights of his truck, they said he looked like a deer in headlights and ran down the mountain. And the editor was shocked too. And then he got with somebody and they wrote this book, Don't Look Up. I never met the people. I was just there doing the interviews for the patients. But it was one of the great memories of my life. It was wonderful because I knew that all of them were telling the truth. It's just kind of like when they had the Stephenville Life, and I was down there and I asked a lot of young people, and they had seen actually the mothership in the day over the football field. So a lot has been happening in Stephenville Lights. They're all here and they're everywhere in the world. And some of them may be our UFOs. But Robert and I did go to Area 51 back about 5 years ago. Yeah. And that was great.
Sorry about that, Karen. My husband's just come up behind me with a cup of tea.
Oh, okay, that's great. So I have been doing. We went out there and did that. And Derek was looking at some of my pictures the other day, and he said, "Hey, I wouldn't put these pictures, some of these on out." He said, "You could have a visitor." He said, "I'll show you and he was in the military. He said, "I'll show you the ones you can post." So. But it was very much an experience because at the time we had stopped in the Little Alien, which was a little cafe, to have a hamburger. And then ended up being at night because I didn't realize how long it was from Las Vegas to Rachel, Nevada. So we finished the hamburger in the little place. And Robert said, "Do you think these people seem a little different?" And I said, "Yeah, they do." And he said, "Okay." He said, "Well, I'm going to get directions from him on how we can get down to the sighting." And I said, "Okay." So he paid the bill, and I was looking at the T-shirts, and he went out to the car. Well, he used to work for Bergstrom Air Force Base in Austin after he got out of A&M. And then that was during the Vietnam thing. And then he worked at an Air Force base as an accountant in Houston, Ellington. And so I don't know what it was, but he had already gone to the car and I was paying for these T-shirts. And I said, "Now, do you think it's going to be hard for us to get down this dirt road?" And they said, "No, we've already given him instructions. It's just like Bergstrom." I said, "What?" And I thought I better not ask any more questions. So I paid for the T-shirts, went out to the car. And I said, "You're not going to believe what they said." He said, "What?" He said, "I have the directions here." I said, "Well, I paid for the T-shirts and I wanted to make sure we were going to hit the right dirt road." And he said, as they said, it was just like Bergstrom. He said, "Are you kidding me?" I said, "No. How did they know that you worked at Bergstrom?" I said, "They must have gotten their license plates wondering what we were doing down there at 10 o'clock at night." And he said, I said, "It's either the government or they're ETs. What do you think it is?" He said, "Well, I don't think it's the government." He said, "I think they're ETs." And so I told a friend who actually worked in that deep, deep, deep part of that Area 51, and she said, "Yeah, he was right." So that was an experience. And
so what made you? Obviously they felt different or they didn't look different, but they felt different, yeah?
Well, they had shaped into the human personality. Yeah. I don't know what they really look like. Because I had a reading done over Skype, in fact, a couple of years ago with a reptilian, and she was human. She was darling. And she said, "Now I'm going to download your stuff." And she said, "For the reading, I just want you to sit there for an hour." And I said, "Okay." She said, "Now, I'm a reptilian." And she said, "I live in these spas all over the world," and showed me her pictures. And I said, "Okay." And I sat there, and she told me to come back up an hour later. She said, "This is the best I have ever known." She said, "I knew a Pleiadian could do it for me." I said, "What?" She said, "Yeah." She said, "Thank you so much." And then she sent me all these little hearts that popped up after the reading. That's a different one. So So we can shapeshift, and they can shapeshift, and we supposedly have many of them walking around in our crowds today that we don't even know that they are.
I believe that.
Definitely.
Are you able to shapeshift?
Me? Well, that's interesting. When I was in college, I was in that. That's interesting. You asked me that question. I had a suite mate, and we shared a bathroom, and all of her room was in orange, her curtains and everything. And she was in a rocking chair, and I was sitting on one of the twin beds, and she said, "Oh my God, stop that." She said, "Stop that." She said, "You're shape-shifting." I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "Well, your face is elongated and you're doing all this." We were getting ready to go eat at the cafeteria. And I said, "Okay, well, if it's freaky, I don't want to talk about it." Because I was young. I was like 20, 21. And that's interesting you said that. I'd totally forgotten about that.
But I done it. I apparently done it once. I was doing a film. I was being filmed. And all of a sudden, the cameraman screamed, stood back from the camera and the tripod that was there, stood right back. And when they asked him what was wrong, he said, she changed, she morphed. Didn't you see her face morphing? Her face is morphing. He's going, and he wouldn't come near me anymore.
That's wonderful. Do you know a little square popped up again when you said that, Irene?
Yes, because I do shapeshift, Mark. See, I can get up in the morning and I can look good, or I can get up in the morning and look like I've been dragged through a hedge backwards.
Well, I think probably we all have a little bit of that DNA in us.
Yeah, but it's been said a couple of times, your face has changed, your eyes have changed, you're there, so yeah, yeah.
It's fun. Yeah.
So, but we've interviewed people that, and I agree, we don't know who's walking amongst us. We really don't.
No, the only way we can tell is through reading the energy or feeling things.
Yeah. Well, we've often spoken here about my trip to the airport, and the man that got into the back of the car, and the fact that his energy just didn't feel right. It didn't feel right. And cut a long story short, after he got us to the airport, because we were lost, okay, he was giving us directions. And he was an old man in his 80s. But after we got to the airport, got out the car, stopped the car and got out to say goodbye to him, I turned and looked at my husband. When we looked back, he'd vanished. There was nowhere he could have gone to.
Wow.
And the fact that later on you were both describing him to each other and you both saw him completely different.
Yeah, different clothes, different hair.
Well, he was probably an ET.
Yeah, he more than likely was. He came out of nowhere and disappeared the same way.
Yeah. And sometimes they have a hard time shape-shifting. Like if they're shifting into humans, maybe a leg could get twisted. They didn't fit it right, or the foot. I mean, you can sometimes tell people like that. Or the different structures of the body could be from a shape-shift experience that they were doing or whatever. Yeah. I think there are those that have their own agenda. I don't think everything is Pollyanna and tulips. I think that there are those that have another agenda, and I think there are many that have pure love and from a higher awareness of expressing it through sound and energy.
Are you familiar with John Edmund down there outside of Phoenix, Arizona, with his Stardust Ranch?
Yes, I am. I've never met him.
Well, I've never met him in person. He's a friend of mine online, and he and I have talked. We've interviewed him several times before, and he's been, of course, at his ranch. He's been there about 25 years now and experiencing some extremely negative activity involving grays. And but he's also interacted with other types of ETs as well on the more positive side. This is a very unique, interesting case, and it has everything going on with his ranch is very reminiscent, very similar to what they report at the Skinwalker Ranch in Utah.
Yeah.
And, now they finally have a History Channel show. I don't know if you've seen it, called Secret of Skinwalker Ranch, where they actually have a scientific team out there trying to investigate it. And it's intriguing because you've heard all these mysteries, all these rumors about the Skinwalker Ranch when Robert Bigelow owned it. But of course, he kept everything to himself. And now that they're kind of opening up, this new owner has it, and they've got the TV show, and they brought in these guys to investigate it. But with John, with what he's going through down there, it's been very traumatic for he and his wife. So I guess again, you're dealing with different factions, different races, and they have different agendas. Some are friendly and positive, and some are not.
Right, I think so. And I think that what look like the grays, there are other that look like that are maybe whiter. And then you have your tall whites, and then you have your blue. You have your blue rays. That, in fact, I don't know anything about Mormonism or what they do, but I have heard that they believe in a blue race or a blue race. That's all I know. I don't know much more about that.
Whitley Strieber described the blue race of aliens, that especially in his earlier works with Communion. When Communion first came out, that was one of the first ETs that he interacted with. But I also find it very interesting if you look at Indian East Indian artwork and their religious paintings, whenever they show deities like Shiva, that they're blue.
They are. They sure are. Mm-hmm. That's very true. I do. So
yeah, there's definitely those different types. Now you also hear talk about the mantis, insectoids, you mentioned reptilians, and what's funny is you mentioned having this very positive reading experience with a reptilian, but yet the reptilians in general in ufology have such a really bad reputation.
Well, let me tell you about this one. I think some of them are different from others because I asked her one question, and I forgot until you mentioned this. Thanks. I asked her, I said, but you all believe in such chaos has to happen for the transition. This was like 3 years ago. She said, yes, we do. We believe that there has to be chaos. And I said, well, I don't believe that. I think that love and peace can bring a beautiful transition. She said, I know you do. And she said, but we respect each other. And she said, I got a great reading. And I said, thank you. I said, I'm not trying to intrude on your space. And she said, nor am I. And that was it. It was quite, so I don't get too close, mm-hmm. But I don't want to go into their lineage. I know that. I'm well aware of all that. And so that's true. I'm not a reptilian, so I understand.
Well, I've been called the Antichrist, but that was by one of my exes, so. Yeah, Irene thinks I'm a devil.
Funny.
But let me ask you, I've also recently watched Dr. Stephen Greer's latest documentary. I don't know if you've seen it yet, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind.
Uh-huh.
And I've also been reading his books, and curious with your experiences, what your take is. Sometimes I'm not sure how to take Dr. Greer, because I understand with his working towards positive contact, but I also don't necessarily agree with some of his conclusions that, most of these people who experience abductions, whatever, it's all our military, like the aliens don't abduct people. And I don't feel that that's correct. I think that there are, and again, like I said, I don't like the term abductions because I think some people may look at it that way, but a lot of people don't realize from on a spiritual level that they're working with these beings.
Right. And I agree. I know Stephen Greer, and I know of him through we've done 2 or 3 symposiums together. I don't know him intimately, personally, like a buddy, but I do have respect for what he says. But I don't believe that the military is doing all this.
I mean, I believe the military is doing some. I do believe.
With what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think these people that we're talking about are from a place where we don't even know, and they have their own agenda. And I think there are some who, they look at us. This is the most interesting part. And outside of us being earthlings, we are a primitive planet. We're a warring planet. And look what we're doing now. And so if anything were to happen, if we can't lift this enlightened consciousness any more than this, I don't know what will happen, because it's out of balance with a lot of the planetary systems if this happens. So this is why it's such a desperate necessity that all of us come in through the power of prayer, through the mission of love and being kind to your fellow man, and skip the narcissism and skip the greed and all of that. There's enough for everybody.
True.
And it's time that we awaken to that, because the clock is ticking. I agree with you.
I don't, and again, I know he's a very controversial figure for a lot of people in the UFO field right now, but I used to know Stan Romanek and his wife Lisa, and knowing what he went through, and pretty much his reputation got destroyed. But some of the things that he experienced and dealt with, and one thing that I always found interesting were the hypnotic sessions that he did with Dr. Leo Sprinkle. And I was able to view the video footage of, I think, the last one he gave, which was a few years ago, because a friend of mine was involved, got called in to film it, and I got to edit it together. So the beings that they called Grandpa Gray channel through, a lot of the information channeling through was very interesting, and on this about working towards raising the consciousness, working against the forces that were trying to suppress all this information. And personally, I feel like that's what happened to him. They shut him up.
Right. They do a lot of people. Look what they did to John Mack.
Yeah, they took John Mack out, and they
sure did.
And with one of the things with John Mack is, I'm glad you brought him up, because in his books, one of the things I found intriguing, and this is where I have a problem with the term abductions, is because when he does his regressions so many cases talk about, again, we start getting into the life between life and past lives, and some of the people who were having these experiences, he was able to regress them back to before they came into this life, and they were actually part of these races, these alien races and beings who agreed to come in on a human level, in a physical level, and work with them. And of course, being that we all come here and pretty much with amnesia, and we don't remember anything from before, from past lives, in between lives, who we are. You're suddenly taken in the middle of the night and you think, who the hell is, what's going on? You're afraid, you think you're abducted. They're doing all this experiments or something to you. You go, what? Like several times I've heard people who were going through an abduction experience say, who gives you the right? What right do you have to do this? And he goes, well, we have the right. But a lot of people don't realize that they've given the permission beforehand. At least that's a lot of what came out with Dr. Mack's work.
Right. His work was fabulous. Yeah.
Same with Dolores Cannon and her work.
Oh, yeah. She was great. She actually helped me with the reading before she had already passed over, and I was down on another floor doing a session. And I had friended her because I didn't know she was deceased, and she never friended me back. And I thought, well, I wonder what happened. And then somebody told me that she had crossed over. And at that same time, I was having some help with her with a patient downstairs in the room that I was seeing him. It was quite interesting. I have a lot of respect for her.
I've read most of her books, and again, my views on things have changed so much over the years, and there's some things reading, again, with John Mack's works, Dolores Cannon's work. Yeah, some of it sounds so fantastic, and it takes time to digest. I mean, hell, even when I was reading Whitley Strieber's earlier books, and he started to hint at, even back then, he wasn't fully aware of how as he calls them, the visitors interacted with the dead and worked with us on a spiritual level, how much that was involved. And when I first started to understand that, I struggled with it for a while because it went against a lot of my beliefs, and it took some time for my paradigm to change, my understanding of things to change. And now some of the things that I believe and have worked with and have learned over the years, I realize is way beyond most people I talk with, especially people who are in the UFO community or even the paranormal community. I'm going to sound so conceited right now, but where most people I talk to, they're still down in kindergarten or first grade, and I feel I'm at least in high school.
Yeah.
Irene's on her PhD.
That's great. Well, where I am, I've been in the medical field, and I'm really haven't just had to struggle. So how much would I say? How much would I really say I know? Who's listening to me that, is a doctor? I worked with some doctors, and, I'm sure they think I'm crazy, and I don't care. I've grown to the point to where it doesn't make me any difference. But I've always held back quite a bit of information because of that reason. And because, being in the medical field and being in the paranormal field, but then I've kind of just brought it overall into the paranormal. I have a lot of respect for what Dr. Bormes taught me over the years, but, I've decided to do that, and people can take me as they are. By the way, there's a wonderful neurosurgeon who's a theosophist, and I'm sure you've heard of him. His name is Eben Alexander.
Yes, I'm very familiar with him and his book that he wrote.
And he's great. He took a lot of courage for him to go through that. So, other than that, I understand.
We've talked with other people like Mark Anthony, the psychic lawyer. I even got to go to one of his show. He did a presentation in New York a few years ago that I went to. But yeah, so many people who have had these experiences. I mean, there's so much of the paranormal, what we can consider the paranormal. Most people think it's all separate. You have your ghost people, you have your UFO nuts and bolts MUFON people, you have the cryptid Bigfoot people, and they all think that these are all separate experiences, and they don't realize how really interconnected all of it is. There's so many things that overlap. I've mentioned before on this show, I'll just keep it brief, about there was a very extreme, haunting case that I worked on about 10 years ago here in New Jersey. That was a neighborhood. It was the whole neighborhood was having activity. And there was stuff that started to overlap, where one time the client saw something that looked like an alien in her room, and she thought she was going bonkers. Other times we realized over time I realized she was dealing with on the property wasn't ghosts, but some type of interdimensional types of entities or beings that were attached to the land. And but it took a lot of work and researching and trial and error, and that was a relatively new concept for me at the time. But now I feel like I've even now realized that there's been places where I've lived where there are things there in the land. There's something there that is affecting not one but more, several houses or entire neighborhoods, because the neighborhoods were built on top of that property.
Wow.
So again, more of it is interconnected. I mention Whitley a lot because I like Whitley, and I like his books, and I've talked to him on several occasions. But he'll mention about having paranormal activity happening in his house. Stan Romanek did. John Edmonds talks about it. So, people who are dealing with one type of activity will also be experiencing other types of activity as well.
I believe that's true.
Yeah. Now, what would you say, like, with the ETs or the aliens you've been interacting with? Do you consider them... And again, I'm going to get back to saying I don't like certain terminology anymore. Aliens, people think of, aliens from Zeta Reticuli, or even the Pleiades. Let's say Pleiadians. Okay. Are we really talking about physical flesh and blood beings coming from another star system in nuts and bolts craft? Or are we talking more about, types of entities that are interdimensional, and they may come from a certain part of the universe, but they're not quite in the physical form, 3D physical world that we're in, or some of them could be directly on a spiritual level. I mean, what do you think?
Well, that's a good point. I do believe that. I think there are those who come in a craft who look like us. Then I think in the way that we want to look our finest, that's the way they can shapeshift. And then I think there are those who don't look like us, who come from a craft, and they shapeshift into human when they arrive or right before they get off the ship. I think there are those who don't want to shape shift, don't need to, and they can come around, but they have to be careful, maybe to be seen. I think there are many that can move interdimensionally, and there are, like the Greys, I think they can move interdimensionally. The tall whites, I think they can move interdimensionally. And there's so many that we don't even know the names of. We just have names. We really don't know what they're called. And that's why I think that sound or markings make a difference, and feeling, because they can only come through us at that part of consciousness. There could be 30 of them right here with us. I know this thing's come up so many times, I haven't even counted or said anything anymore. So obviously we're getting some things out. I do have a neat story that happened to a student of mine. She was very dear to me. And she lived in New York. And she went to have a mammogram done. This was years ago. And by a very famous New York surgeon she saw, because something had come through. And she saw him, and he said, listen, he said, have you ever been shot? And she said, no. Why would you ask me? He said, well, I'm going to tell you what I really believe, because you have a little piece of metal or a little piece of object in one of your breasts. And he said, I have my idea of what it is, and I'm going to tell you. He said, I think you have been tagged by someone who's not from this planet. And he said, I can take it out or I can leave it in. What do you prefer? And he said, it's not cancer. He said, it's a device. She said, I want to keep it. And I thought that was pretty cute. And she kept it. And she thought that was a compliment. And so whatever she did, she's very cute. And so that was a true story of a big surgeon in New York City.
Well, again, going back to Whitley Strieber, he mentions about the implant he has behind his left ear. That he tried.
I saw that the other night.
Yeah, he tried to have it removed, and it moved, and he left it in.
Oh.
But it took almost like 20 years. His latest book that just came out, and the title's escaping me at the moment, really talks about how that implant kicked in, and it's helping download information and helping him do things that he wasn't able to do before. Accessing different information, helping with his writing, helping him be more in contact with the visitors and with his wife Anne, who's still with him. So, a lot
Roger Lear too. Of course, he passed.
Who was that?
Roger Lear. He was the podiatrist.
Yes.
He passed some years back.
Now, wasn't his son John Lear? Who was the one who invented the Learjet? That was in.
Okay, it was Roger Lear. He was not of the Lear. He was just a podiatrist in California. I think.
Okay.
You're thinking about John Lear. I think I'm friends with him on Facebook. I'm not sure, and I'm not sure his relation to the Lear. Probably that's him. I'm not sure. See, I can look at it and see.
Okay.
Well, that's interesting. But there's so many people who have these implants, and they're tracking devices and how they got them. But I do think that believe that whatever your contact is with any race, they can totally erase it from your mind.
Oh yes. They do that so that we can get on with our normal day lives. Although a lot of people, they have memories come in, they have some post-traumatic stress because they don't understand what's experienced. I'm interested in the screen memories that some people have, like Mike Cleland's book, The Messengers, which talks a lot about owl imagery. And which is directly, and even Whitley talked about seeing owls, and those being screen memories for ET encounters.
Exactly. Yeah, those are important too.
Well,
so they can come in many different. They can come in many different ways. I think it's to what we would identify with to stir up our electromagnetic field, to elevate it to where they want it. I think it's many different ways and many different things.
Well, we're actually starting to come towards the end of the show here, so I wanted you to be able to help promote your website and your services. What's the best way that people can get in touch with you?
Yes, okay. My website is KarenGresham.com. It's KarenGresham.com. That's my website. And if anybody's interested in my services, it has my phone number there and my email. Also, I'm on Facebook. It's Karen Gresham Nickells, Nickell. And also, I have Derek, who helps put these shows up to help you all and to promote all the radio shows that I'm on and put it out there. In fact, I have a meeting with him tonight to do that. So this has been wonderful. I've really enjoyed being one of your guests, Mark and Irene. It's been a lot of fun.
It's been very fascinating and enlightening and very enjoyable talking with you, too. I want to thank you very much for coming on the show.
Well, thank you, and please feel free to invite me anytime you want. I'll help promote your show, and Derek's wonderful at that, and so is Carolyn. I'm going to send you his number as well as you've got her number.
Yes.
So then you'll have both of them.
Okay.
Do you have can you send, I think he's got, what is your email address? Can you send it to me?
I tell you what, if you hold on after
with me on Facebook, so put it in Messenger and I'll give it to Mark.
Yeah, well, we're both friends with you on Facebook, so you could send it to us through Messenger on Facebook.
I'll do that tonight.
Okay,
that would be great. And the show, are we still on the air?
Yes, we are. If you just hang around a few minutes, we'll go over a couple things with you afterwards. But again, thank you very much for appearing on the show tonight.
You're welcome.
Yes,
it's been
thank you, Karen. Thank you.
Fantastic, Irene.
And wait a moment, Mark. It's goodbye from me, and it's goodbye from Pickles. Now,
you and Pickles.
Oh well. Pickles, give him a kiss through energy.
I'm gonna roast him. When he wakes up in the morning, he's gonna get a roasting.
Okay.
All right. Well, want to thank you everybody for listening to another edition of the Paranormal UK radio show here on the Paranormal UK radio network, and we'll be back next week with an all brand new show. I know we haven't had a show in the last few weeks because of various different things going on, but we've got shows booked solid for the next 2 months, so we'll be back next week, and we will see you all then. Have a wonderful weekend. Stay safe, everyone. And Irene, we'll talk to you later.
Okay, bye, everyone.